Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Invincible. A great season finale. A lot of crazy shit went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we are literally picking up where last week's episode left off. I love the moment they started off on the grass. I'm like, we're going to see some body part up, and lo and behold, we see, well, it starts raining blood, then we see Immortal's body. And now, obviously, for like Mark, he immediately goes into action and attacks his dad because it's like, okay, Dad, you're being controlled. Whoever it is, give me my dad back. And he's like, and that's his mind immediately going there. Like, that's what Debbie did. Despite everything, she wanted to believe, there had to be extenuating circumstances of why he did what he did. And Mark, immediately goes in defensive mode, being like, no, Dad, there's got to be something going on here. And for him to be like, nope, son, it's time for me to tell you the truth. I told you a little bit about my people. I told you some stuff that's true, but some stuff that isn't. The Viltrumites are a species of... basically, the weak had to be wiped out. That's why they're the perfect society. Like, basically, the Viltrumites are on some, like, Thanos shit, to a certain extent. It's more so, like, how Thanos kind of thought of himself as, like, I'm the one who had the vision of what the, saving the entire world. I'm not trying to be thanked or anything. The Viltrumites are kind of on that to a certain extent. It's like, we're the perfect race. We figured it out. We're unstoppable. And we're basically taking over every other planet, trying to bring them under the fold because it's better for them to be under our control because we'll fix everything. Every planet has its issues. And the fact is that we're the perfect society. But it's like, who gave you guys the right to be the ones that did take every planet, future, But for them, that's been their operation. And it basically, them doing what they're doing basically spread their forces too thin. So they basically sent out specific Viltrumites to different planets. For example, Nolan ended up being sent to Earth. And it is kind of what I thought it was. It is a thing of basically weaken Earth, take out basically its top people, that being the Guardians of the Globe. But even then he was saying like, they were weak. Even the new replacements, what he referred to them as, pathetic. And it's just because for him, it's like he comes from a planet where the strong survive. It's literally been a planet that's been bred to be nothing but the strong, the strongest of the strong. And so for him, it's like, okay, we don't have to worry about anything. When it's all said and done, this planet's easily going to fall on our control because there's no one on this planet that can go toe-to-toe with Omni-Man except for Mark. And even then, that ended up being a really interesting conversation too, because the entire time I'm thinking like, okay, Mark's like half Viltrumite, half human. It's like, no, because the Viltrumite blood is so damn strong, so damn pure, he's still mostly Viltrumite. He's probably like, the way Nolan almost made it sound, it's like, it's like you're 90% Viltrumite and like 10% human. I'm like, that's so fascinating to know that blood runs so damn deep. But also you're almost like, that sounds like some Nazi shit of like, we're such a pure-blooded race. I'm like, I don't know if that's like supposed to be like this is supposed to be like a fantastical like science fictional like version of that to a certain extent. I mean, like the whole like getting people under your control. No, it's Nazi-esque. Whether it's full-blown Nazi, there's a lot of Nazi comparisons you can make, and so I don't know if that's kind of what they're kind of going for. It seems like it could be, but hell, we even saw like one of the planets they conquered out. Like you see it at the beginning, you're like, is it? He's like, yeah, that's Alan's species, which we kind of find out more about that later on. That he kind of talks about that, about how his species ended up like having to basically, they were basically on the verge of extinction. They basically had to find a means of like reproduction to kind of make sure their entire species didn't get completely extinct. But despite everything, hearing what his dad's saying, like, this planet's pathetic. Like, yeah, I fell for your mom and everything, but your mom is more so like a pet. The fact of the matter is, like, humans are pathetic and weak. The fact is that we're the strong ones. We'll set this planet on the right course. And Mark doesn't go along with his dad. That was the biggest concern for him. Like, for him, it's like, I had to make sure you were full-blown Viltrumite. Like, so that's why I had to wait for your powers to kick in and eventually find out, like, okay, whether you were really full-blown. And it's like, yeah, you are. So I guess there is a chance that he could have been more human than Viltrumite. Like, obviously, it took a while for his powers to kick in. But we also learned Viltrumites live for a very long time. Because he went to, like, the Flak planet, and obviously time works a little different than we saw him kind of age. But for him, it's like, our species, the older we get, the slower we age. He's like, you could live for 1,000 years, more. But it's like the fact is, you want to fight for a planet that doesn't matter, because everyone and everything you've ever known will wither away before you even look 30. But for Mark, it's like, it still doesn't stop the fact is that this planet's important to him. It's like, Mom, you can't pretend like Mom's not important to you, because you do care about her. You did care about her. You do care about her. And for him, it's like, so what if this planet is pathetic? Like, they deserve to be like wiped out and under your control. And it turns into this brutal one-sided battle that, yeah, Mark gets some blows in, but he does nothing to his dad, despite how powerful. And obviously, Mark's kind of had his ass handed to him over the course of the show, showing you, like, he's definitely nowhere in his dad's league. Yeah, his dad's kind of struggled, but it's also the thing of, it's hard to say whether or not, because this has been something people have talked about, I've heard people talk about from the comic book. It was a little clearer where his power scale was, that he's like, he's like, fucking ridiculous, top tier powerful. It's unclear whether or not they nerfed him in the show or not. Like him getting a little beat up by the Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Globe in the first episode. It's unclear whether or not like all of them working together was able to do some damage to him. So he's not the almighty powerful being that he, it's probably just like Mark's inexperience and not being able to tap into his full powers yet. He's had moments of tapping into it, like usually when his rage gets the best of him. That's when it really kills. Hell, there was like that badass moment, like he had his fist and he like glided it, and it like glided against the ground as he was doing like a super punch. I was like, oh, just some like cinematography wise, I'm like, that shit is sick. I love stuff like that. But once again, his dad beats the living breaks off him, like punches him at one point, sends him flying, near Chicago and everything. Once again, this is being like announced to the world. There's like one point he punches Mark, sends him through a building, and like he is messing Mark up to the point there was that like tragic thing of like Mark trying to stop himself. And he does, but then he looks at all the devastation that happened from his dad punching him. He tries to stop that building from falling. There's that mother and child. He's trying to save her. Even telling the door, it's like, it's okay. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. The building crashes and they die anyway. Despite everything, Mark trying his best because no one can help him. Cecil is like shooting out some jets, helping as much as he can. The Guardians of the Globes are staying behind because it's like, we can't do anything in this fight. The only one that has a chance is Mark, because no one else on this planet can go toe-to-toe with Nolan, even like, the title card, it's like, if he's going to have any chance, he's going to have to be, and Invincible pops up and it's covered in the most blood it's been covered in before. Like now, like the entirety of the word Invincible is covered in blood. But Nolan's telling him, it's his fault. It's like, oh, look how pathetic this is. How like one of the pilots, Mark was able to save, but his dad just shows up and ends up like squishing the dude's head, killing him right in front of Mark. Just because it's like, oh, these things are, like, look at it, like, why worry? Like, oh, he would have lived for, 50 years or something? It doesn't matter. And it's like, their lives do matter because he would have had a life, like, what he could have done with that life. Like, to his dad, it's like, why are you wasting your time on these creatures? They can't even live a tenth of your lifetime. Why? They're going to die anyway. Like, he's like saying, like, my time here on this earth has been... The 20 years I've spent on this planet, it's been like the blink of an eye for like my span of like they are such lesser beings to him that like their lives literally mean nothing to him. And to the point, the subway scene, holy shit, like grabbing Mark, it's like, okay, you want to still fight? Let me show you. And literally pushes Mark in front of him as the train crashes into them, like all the bodies of all the people crashing into him as well, like him being covered in so much blood. And his dad making a point of just like, why do you continue to fight for this pathetic people? And Mark doesn't back down. He's still willing to fight for this planet, this people. And his dad makes an example of him. At one point, zipping and zooming all over the place, like punching him in one way, flying. It is such a one-sided fight. Throwing him into the mountains, punching him and beating on him to like the mountain, like the snow ended up, causing an avalanche. Then throwing him into the mountains at another point, and then continuing to, threw him through a ship, threw him to the bottom of the ocean, tried to take him off planet at one point in time, but Mark fought him off, and then proceeds to, like, beat the ever-living, like, it is just like a, And it hits me, even like, as a Walking Dead fan, it kind of gets in my head a little bit too, because it's not the same thing, but spoilers, it's been years now. What happened to Glenn because of Negan? I mean, to be fair, it happened in the comic book as well. But it's like, it made me think of that, because it's like, Stephen Yeun voices, who played Glenn in The Walking Dead, voices Mark/Invincible. So it kind of reminded, it was such a brutal beating. His dad just like punching him, just covered in Mark's blood, like Mark's face, his teeth getting busted out. It's just like, it's a hard scene to watch, and he's just going, and he's just like, it's your fault. You're making me do this. And while he's doing it, he's having flashes of Mark, as a kid. Like, for him, it's just like, oh, I'm at this stupid baseball game. Why don't I fly? I could get a better angle. And it's like, but, Debbie talks about, look at, like, that joy on Mark's face. It's like, as we get older, we kind of lose that joy, but we have kids to remind us, this new generation to remind us of that joy that's still there, the joy of life. And they kind of bring that joy back into your life. That's what the next generation kind of does. And in that moment, you see Nolan kind of soften up, and he's kind of proud of Mark. You see this moment of like, and it's something Mark was getting at, like, you might like denounce humanity, you say they're weak and everything, but they changed you. You've changed. You're not the Viltrumite that may have come to this planet 20 years ago, because you've changed. And he has. And in that moment, he stops, and he's like, why, Mark? Like, what's the point? Like, after like 500 years, what will you have in this planet? Everything you care about would be gone. What will you have? And he's like, I'll have you, Dad. And in that moment, Nolan stops and just flies away. And it's like, the question is like, well, is he going back to Viltrum, like his people? It's like, but he can't really, because, well, his job is supposed to be like weakening the planet, which he did, but I wonder, having a kid, was that even part of the plan? Like, their species, like, that's probably a thing of like, no, you're not on this planet to reproduce. I mean, it helps, but also like the rest of his people will look at Mark as someone that needs to be wiped out. Like, it's like only the stronger their species survive. Hell, for all we know, Nolan might be considered weak, because it's like, oh, you've spent so much time on Earth, like the humanity is creeping in. So he starts off this vicious monster, but even then, like, that humanity, all the time he spent here on Earth, does weigh him down, So, Cecil being there for Mark, obviously, like, the entire, like, group there, like, coming to pick up Mark. He was, like, in and out for the next 2 weeks. Obviously for Debbie, like, their entire lives are turned upside down. She's trying to be strong for Mark. She's trying to be strong for herself. Cecil talking about, we're going to have to fake Nolan's death that way, because, like, we can protect Nolan's identity, like, protect your identity. So, like, we'll say, like, oh, there was a guy asleep next door, he ended up dying in the explosion. This way, you guys get to have your normal lives. Obviously, Nolan's travel books will go up exponentially after his death, so you guys won't have to worry about money. But it's like, for him, it's like, Nolan was doing all this under my nose, and he's like, I got to do everything I can to at least try and make things right, So there's a lot to kind of be unraveled by all of this. Despite the destruction and everything, the Guardians do what they do. And, Rudy initially is like, oh, but Cecil told us to stay. But it's like, no, like, we don't care. And then Monster Girl points to his chest and saying, like, you're not a robot anymore. So kind of think, feel what you're feeling. Like, you're human now. So they end up helping out as much as they can. And obviously the entire world is in shock. It's like, what do you do when the person that's supposed to be your hero, like the person supposed to be your savior, is the one that causes so much destruction? Like, after like some of like Invincible and Omni-Man's fight, like the big question is like, well, why? And they're left like, there's a respite now. Yes, things are over, and the question is why, but the world, they're doing all they can to like help. They've got to find a way moving forward, and it's just that and then they get this montage of just like this quiet sadness the entire world is feeling. Like, you're going to like Amber, the Guardians, and Eve, Debbie, like everyone in the world is feeling it. Art, like, this is upheaval everyone's lives. Like I said, there's this quiet sadness. It's there at school because of William and Amber. They're both like dealing with this because neither one of them knows what's up with Mark. Eve didn't even know what was up with Mark, and so like everyone's just like saddened by it. It's like, yeah, your greatest hero, your superhero, is you're left with so many questions why. And I thought that was such a powerful thing of like the entire episode not just being about like, hey, like going toe to toe with Nolan. The fact is like there's so much gravitas to the fact is that he's gone, but it's like what this means for the world. He was heralded as its hero for like so many years, for 2 decades, and it's like to have him gone now, to find out like he caused so much death and destruction, with the question lingering on everyone's head, like why? There being only a certain number of people. Debbie heard everything that Nolan said during those conversations he had with Mark, and that ended up being a conversation between Cecil and Mark. Mark's like, why'd you tell her? It's like she needed to know. She already knew that he killed the Guardians of the Globe, so she was trying to justify like maybe there had to be a reason why he did it. So she had every right to know the truth. And Mark's like, yeah, you're right. Just like he deserved to know the truth. So then also like Cecil shows him that room. It's like, right, there's stuff in the American like water system, like even the American water taps of like this chemical that basically makes it so that the Americans can't see a certain like frequency of light. So for him, it's like this entire room, it has to be adjusted so it can make it seem like you can see it without that. But also he's like, yeah, there's other means of like, I've been hiding stuff with this as well. Like there's plenty other stuff that he's kind of been hiding. But the conversation is without Nolan, it's like this world's going to need a new hero of that level. And for Mark, it's like, I don't know. Do I want to keep being a hero? He was already questioning that, but even more so when like 2 weeks ago, his entire life turned upside down. He finds out the truth about his dad, who he's supposed to be, the family he had, it's like, to have that all slipped away. There was even this moment where like he came back home and he's kind of floating. He's like, oh, that's better. And it's like, it's a little heartbreaking. His mom doesn't say anything, but it's like, that was like a big thing for Nolan. He'd constantly, like, we'd see it all the time. Like he'd be like above humans, like walking around. Oh, that's such a human thing. I can fly and float. So I'm sure for Mark, it's also because his body's a little broken down and I'm still a little hurt from everything, but still it's just kind of in that moment, it's just kind of like, oh, that kind of gets you thinking like, oh, you're kind of just floating around. But he hears his mom breaking down how she even visits Art, and for her it's like there's a part of her that wants Nolan to come back, because it's like despite everything, that's still the man that she loves. And it's just like, once again, it's like she had her doubts and stuff like that, but she said it herself. And I thought it was such an interesting line of, I kept wondering, why Nolan did what he did, like why he killed the Guardians. But it's like, regardless of what the answer was going to be, I never thought about the aftermath of like what was going to come after us and what it would mean like for me, what it would mean for Mark, And so that complicated feeling, her and Art sharing drinks, especially for Art, because like this is like such a good friend of his, to find out like, wait, not only did you kill the Guardians, that there's so much here. I mean, that was a conversation for Nolan, like you need to be a part of something much more, because like the Viltrum Empire is expanding across the universe and universes apparently, and it's like, so, you got to be a part of something bigger. This planet's just a small fraction of things. And so, Amber, Eve, and which I love, like, it's like, William kind of accidentally lets it slip, and she's like, wait, he's invincible? He's like, oh my god, oh, that's awesome, that's good. And then like Amber shows up, wants to kind of be there for Mark, and Eve and William are there, and it's like, oh wait, don't worry, she already knows about my dad and everything. It's like, oh good. Well, they go hang out for a bit, and it's like, that conversation of like, well, what do you want to talk about? It's like, well, William's like, there's literally nothing else to talk about. It's the conversation everyone's talking about. And you have like you have like Amber and Eve kind of glaring at William. He's like, right, so also I love the thing of like, right, since you guys know about Mark, you should probably know about me. I met Mark because I was in costume, I'm Adam Eve. And it's like, William's like, oh my god, how did I know? Now I see the similarity. It's like, yeah, you're the one that can duplicate yourself. And she's like, no, that's duplicate. I'm the pink one. And Amber's like, oh, right. Yeah, of course. And it's just like, the disrespect, which is a middle finger on multiple levels, because for one, it's like, we don't look anything alike. It's like, I should look more like Adam Eve to you, but you still thought I was duplicate. It's like, I guess it's supposed to be like poking fun at like secret identities of like, you think like, oh, they're crazy, like how could you not tell, like, oh, Clark Kent is Superman type of thing. But it's like, oh, they thought immediately when she's like, oh, I'm Adam Eve, it's like, oh, you're duplicate. And it's like, no, that's duplicate, you're confusing us, but it's also a middle finger, because it's like, right, she got cheated on Rex cheated on her with Duplicate, so that kind of stings a little bit too. So there's that element to it. The Guardians of the Globe, Rex was like wiping up the blood after they got back home, and Samson was trying to stop him of like, we haven't fulfilled the role enough to do that. But then like Rex was like, fuck off, and then the rest of the team was locked and loaded and ready to fight Samson. They needed to, but it was a point he was trying to show, like, yeah, we are ready, because this is us acting as a team for the first time. Like, what we did out there helping to, that's us as a team, so we got to keep going. Even seeing later on them like training and actually working as a squad, because they know like, well, we got a lot to live up to, plus they never know if Omni-Man's going to come back, so we need to be prepared on that front. Then there's a whole situation of, as like, right, someone's on their way to Earth. Mark takes off into this space and ends up running into Alan. Alan's like, dude, I went back to my the Coalition and was like, yo, and they told me Earth was off limit because there's a Viltrumite here. And he's like, right. And he sits down with Alan, explains everything. And for Alan, it's like, yo, your dad leaving is some crazy shit, because like Viltrumites don't give up. Him just leaving doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing of like, so that's why part of me is like, I don't think he went back to his people, because it would be seen as a disgrace, and his people would most likely kill him if they could. I mean, we don't know if Nolan's like the top dog amongst the Viltrumites. He might be low tier compared to the rest of his people. Like, there's probably people stronger than him, which that's a whole thing. But like I said, Alan had brought up his people and everything, and it's like, right, if I had known about Earth, and if he, because he thought he was at Urath, so it's like, he's like, if I'd known about Earth, I could have come here, I could have warned you about, their Viltrumite and everything. But it's like, for him, it's like, but if you had told me, I would have just ran to my dad and told him everything, and who knows how things would have played out. So now it's a conversation of like, but the fact is, your dad not being here brings us an opportunity that hasn't been presented anywhere else, because no Viltrumite ever abandons the planet, their duty of like what they're supposed to look after. So Earth's in a position, this is a corner of the universe that they can strike back. Like, this is our time to like figure some stuff out. So obviously it's like, yeah, the Coalition, like the people I work for, it's like, they're going to want to talk to you, for one, him being a Viltrumite and everything, and what this means for Earth. So the conversation is, what are you going to do? And we start seeing all these other plot threads that were kind of left open. We find out Dr. Seismic's still alive. He's like worshipped by like molten rock people. So there's that. We got the whole Mars situation. Well, I called them like I forgot what they're called again. I referenced them earlier. I was like the Flanks or something like that. I'm butchering their name. I'm blanking on already. But they're the aliens from like episode 2. The one, so it's like not all of them were wiped out. So that's actually very interesting, and it's like, once again, that's very befitting. And once again, it also gives a closure on what, like Nolan said in that episode, Earth isn't yours to conquer. Like, he made that clear, so that kind of set up a lot of stuff of, but we just got a lot of confirmation in this episode. But it's like, turns out they're not a lot completely wiped out, so there might be like a subsection, a fraction of that species still alive. They're planning to come after Earth because of Nolan. So, but it's like showing all these threads, like stuff with Titan, so all these other future threads that still need to kind of be dealt with. A lot of stuff that was kind of left open because of the season, showing like what's still potentially to come. And Alan saying like, so what are you going to do? And he's like, finish high school. And Alan's like, okay, what's high school? And so that is the question, like, of what does this mean for Mark as Invincible? Like, are you going to bear the responsibility of what's to come? Like, because for him, he smiles, and even Alan was like, why are you smiling? He's like, honestly, I thought everything that was happening was too much to bear, but now he's like, I'm looking at it, and like everything that is going on in my life is a small fraction. It's of something much larger. There's a lot of shit like going down in his universe. My circumstances is a small part of something bigger, and that's something I had talked about. Like, people had said like, where this show starts, where this series as the comic started off, like, it expands much further. So it's like, it doesn't just become like an Earth thing. Like, we go full blown, like, probably like Lantern Corps type of thing of like, oh, space, the universe, like it, like this is where the story like opens up wide. We got a lot of Earth threads, but this is like the stepping stone to like us going like universal. Like, this isn't just an Earth thing. We're going galactic on this shit, galactic in this bitch, to be more specific. It's kind of what it seems like they're kind of hinting at potentially with the future. Once again, this is someone who's picking up a little bit of stuff about the comics from hearing other people talk about it, but it's someone who's yet to read the comic myself yet. But I'm really I kind of don't want to, because I want to just be surprised by the future. But there's also a part of me that's like, damn it, I do really want to read this comic to find out, what is it, come to, ultimately see like some of the changes that the show is making from the comic. Which, like I said, I'm aware of some of them, but not a lot of them. Hell, there was even like the battle line or whatever his name is, home dude that fucked Mark up in episode 5. That battle line or whatever, we saw him. So once again, like a lot of loose threads and characters we got introduced to, setting up like, we're going to be dealing with a lot more of them in the future. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Mark does. Like, will he embrace the superheroism, go back to his like normal life, because he's putting the superheroism on pause for a certain extent. But the fact is that he's like locked and loaded and ready to kind of jump into action when necessary, especially not knowing what's to come next with his father. There's so much, they're setting up so damn much that it's like, I'm so excited. Hell, we saw the Mahler twins. They got arrested again by Cecil's people, so they're locked up again. But always potential for them to get out. I love that it's like, like that guard that when they initially escaped, like, it's him just in a neck brace. So we also saw like Cecil working on the Immortal. So I guess they're trying to piece him back together. I mean, the Mahler twins were able to resurrect him, so who's to say he can't be resurrected again, So him kind of staying down doesn't seem like... I mean, he's already come back before, so there's a good chance he'll come back again, being the Immortal and everything. So, like I said, a lot of interesting threads they've set up. I'm really excited to see where all this takes us going forward into the future. I looked it up just to confirm, but Invincible has been renewed not only for season 2, it's already been renewed for season 3 as well, which is just exciting news, knowing that we've already got at least even a third season already kind of renewed, and that's going to be in the works and everything. But I'm so excited to see where next season takes us, where this could all go now that Nolan's been revealed, and what this means for Earth going forward, recovering from your greatest hero being your greatest threat, your greatest villain. Once again, that's also the public knowing he's a threat, but still not knowing why, and being confused and not understanding what this life looks like from Mark going forward. Him and Amber, now that Amber, William, and Eve, his core group, now that that's kind of known, is he going to kick it more with the Guardians of the Globe? Is he going to kind of play the role a little bit like Nolan did, where it's just I'm going to be a solo, but I'm going to be training, I'm going to be getting stronger. Obviously, there's still more to learn about the Viltrumite blood, especially once again now that Mark also knows it's right, I'm going to age extremely slowly and outlive everyone I know. So there's that. But also, we know Cecil was working on the blood. Oh, speaking of Cecil, we see he has an entire army of Sinclairs. Even though he was talking all that shit about Sinclair last episode, which we do see that Sinclair's jaw is fixed, so he's in a better place. But I guess it's for Cecil, it's yes, it's a necessary evil to prepare for what's to come, and it's we don't know whose body are those other dead soldiers that is right, your body's kind of property to the government, so serving your country one last time, even in death. We don't know who those subjects are for Sinclair's experiments and stuff like that. We don't know. Maybe there'll be more with Rick. Maybe there's a reversing that, or maybe he's just forever stuck that way. We don't know. William never got any closure on that front. But still, a lot of exciting things to keep in mind. Like I said, I'm so pumped to see what they do. This is an animated show, so there's a part of me that's that makes it feel like it might take longer than a normal show, production-wise. I could be mistaken, but usually, animation kind of takes a while, so it feels like it might be a while. Once again, who knows? Who knows if they jump-started stuff already, pre-production-wise and stuff like that. Who knows? But, regardless of anything, whenever we get it, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, I'm so excited to see what Season 2 has in store for us, But But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.